What is going on, everybody? If you clicked on this video, you're most likely looking for some players that you need to start to have a DJ Moore type performance in week 5, and lucky for you, that's exactly what you're going to get inside this video. I'm going to be giving you guys the players you need to be starting at all costs, so make sure to stick around to the end of the video for my risk it for the biscuit play of the week, which I'll get more into later. So if you guys are new, make sure to hit that subscribe button because I drop league winning advice every single day. But let's get right into it because you guys know I don't like to waste people's time in these videos. So the very first player we need to be starting this week is Jordan Addison. Anybody that has Jordan Addison on their team is going to tell you he did not have a great performance last week against the Panthers, but I'm here to tell you that entirely was not his fault because Kirk Cousins only had 12 completions on the day. And for context, that's about half of his average. But the difference is this week the Vikings get a great matchup that should be competitive against the Chiefs. So it's going to be a lot of back and forth points, offensive minded, and it's going to be a pretty pass happy game in general. And a lot of people are kind of off Addison because he hasn't had the best snap share recently, and besides the 2 touchdowns, his fantasy points really haven't been too great. But we keep seeing week in and week out that he's increasing his snap share. In week 3, he saw his highest at a 71% snap count, and he had 8 targets on that game. Now in week 4, his snap share did go down a little bit, but that's just because they weren't passing. That's not his fault. But his role is increasing slowly, and KJ Osborne's snaps are going down. And we drafted Jordan Addison knowing it's going to take a little bit of time for him to get acclimated to be the clear wide receiver 2, and I'm not taking last game away from him. He should continue to see his uptick in volume and targets, and this is a great get right game against the Chiefs that should be high passing. So because of that, I'm starting him in pretty much every league that I can. But another guy that we need to be starting this week that might be a bit controversial to some people, but I'm sticking by, is DeAndre Hopkins. Now people are not happy with him because of how he's performed in the previous weeks. You can look at the stats here, but this is an amazing matchup against the Colts secondary that have allowed 7 receivers to go over 13 fantasy points this season, and it's only been 4 weeks. If there's ever going to be a week to start DeAndre Hopkins, this is going to be the week to do it for multiple reasons, and let me explain. First off, obviously it's an amazing matchup against the Colts secondary, but second, DeAndre Hopkins and Derrick Henry took a rest day from practice on Thursday. Now that's not an injury discretion. He's not injured. He's not restricted. It's just a day away from practice and the team to get his mind right and body right because, I mean, frankly, he is getting old and he is a veteran just like Derrick Henry. And you can't overlook this and see it as a bad thing because it's not. DeAndre Hopkins has been dealing with a turf toe injury pretty much since week 1. And a lot of people don't know that, but if you look at his snap count, you can clearly see that he's dealing with some kind of issue that's lingering. In week 1, he saw pretty much 80% of the snaps and it's been down to 60 ever since then. That is not normal for DeAndre Hopkins. He is never going to see that low of a snap count no matter how old he is. So this narrative of him being old and washed just isn't true. Because in week 1 where he saw 80% of the snaps, he had 13 targets, by far his best game of the year, and obviously that makes sense when you're not playing that many snaps. He's been restricted to injury and he hasn't played that good because of it, so he could easily come back from this rest day and from this week in between games and have a great bounce back week. Now this doesn't take away the fact that the Titans passing offense isn't the best that we've ever seen, and it's not the most sought after offense for fantasy wide receivers, but he could have a great bounce back game here, and I don't want him on my bench when that happens. But we also need to be going through and starting Zach Ertz for our tight end position. I've been talking about him for weeks, pretty much since week 1, telling you guys to get him off waivers when you can, and now this is the week to be starting him because he gets a great matchup against the Cincinnati Bengals defense, which is pretty much the easiest defense against fantasy tight ends. And that's great because Zach Ertz already has a really high target volume in this offense. He gets a lot of checkdowns, a lot of easy passes and dump offs. Now he might not get the most valuable targets downfield and in the red zone, but when you're at the tight end position, you really don't need that many yards after the catch to be a viable guy. This matchup against the Bengals could easily be a very, very close game looking at how bad the Bengals have been recently, and even if the Bengals were to put it together this week, it would still be a positive game script for the passing offense and Zach Ertz. We just cannot be sitting him in a matchup like this. He's projected for his highest points of the entire season, and he could possibly still be on waivers in your league, so if he is, go through and grab him. But if you don't have Zach Ertz, maybe you have Sam LaPorta, which is another tight end we need to be going through and starting this week. This is for a different reason than the other players we've had on this list because he doesn't have the best matchup this week. The Lions get a matchup against the Panthers who look like they're going to continue their winless streak, so there is a little bit of blowout potential. But I personally think this game is going to stay a bit closer than most people expect, especially if Amon-Ra isn't playing, which we'll get to. But the real reason this is a must-start player for us is because Amon-Ra is doubtful coming into this game, and Jameson Williams is also questionable. So if these injury discretions do hold true, Sam LaPorta could be the easy #1 receiving option in this offense. He's had 27 targets in 4 weeks and was immediately involved ever since tip-off in week 1. The team trusts him. He's an integral part of this offense even when all of their players are healthy, and with no Amon-Ra, they very easily could lean on him for the majority of this pass work, and I shouldn't really have to say much more than that. But the next guy we need to be starting this week, who you've probably heard a decent amount of already, is Breece Hall. And let me just reiterate this for you because this Broncos defense is not good at all, especially against the run, and that's excluding their game against the Dolphins where they got ran up on. They allowed 10 fantasy points to Josh Jacobs in week 1, 30 to Brian Robinson in week 2, and 1 million to Raheem Mostert and Devon Achane in week 3, followed by 22 in week 4 by Khalil Herbert. You guys get the idea here. There is no reason this should not continue with Zach Wilson under center, a guy that's going to need a lot of run plays. Yes, this offense is not great with Zach Wilson, but you can believe they are going to need to control pace in this this game, which is going to lead to a heavy run script for Breece Hall, especially if the Broncos aren't moving the ball because of the Jets defense. And the reason I say Breece Hall is taking advantage of this matchup and not Dalvin Cook is because Robert Saleh has come out and said Breece Hall is no longer on a snap count and he's full go. This is a really good sign because Breece has not seen over a 45% snap count all year. Now, do I think he's going to come out and have over 90% of the snaps and over 200 rushing yards? No, I don't. We got to be realistic. But if he can even double his snap count to 70 or 80%, he's going to have a huge week. He gets involved in the receiving game. He gets his rushing work, obviously. And he has that explosive play upside that we love to see in running backs, especially ones coming off their ACL injuries. This is just a great matchup and great timing for him to get off of his snap count, but we do have to be realistic. We're not starting him over guys like David Montgomery, but speaking of that, David Montgomery is the next guy we need to be starting this week. By all means, I don't care what you got to do, get him in your lineup. Again, he has a great matchup against the winless Panthers. He is my risk it for the biscuit play of the week. If you guys are new to this page, the risk it or the biscuit play is just a guy that's a little bit more risky. He's not a guy like Cooper Kupp or Amari Cooper that we'd be starting every single week regardless. He carries a little bit more risk, but he also has a whole bunch of boom potential. So if you're projected to lose or you just need a big game from somebody, he should be in your lineup 100% of the time. But this is the best matchup for the Lions run game probably all season. The Panthers have an abysmal run defense, one of the worst, and they have no Shaq Thompson, which eases it up that much more. This is a game where the Lions can completely take control of the run game and the pace of this matchup. Jahmyr Gibbs also picked up a questionable tag coming into this game, so if he is restricted or not good to go at all, that makes David Montgomery a top 5 running back this week easily, and even with Gibbs playing, he's still top 10. We saw what he did in his first game after he came back from his injury. Let's take out the 3 touchdowns because that's not what I'm talking about here. He had 32 touches, and that's with Gibbs playing. He should absolutely crush his projection, and any touchdown he has on top of that is just even more icing on the cake. The Panthers allow the 4th most points to fantasy running backs, and they really should be 3rd if we take out the Broncos' bad run defense they had against the Dolphins. But this is just a good matchup in all aspects of the game, especially if there's no Amon-Ra. They're just going to keep running the ball. But if you guys are in need of a quarterback to start this week, look no further than Matthew Stafford again. Last week we were saying to go through and start him, and he did us pretty decently, giving us 17 fantasy points. And this week he gets a pretty decent matchup against Philadelphia. It's going to be a high-powered scoring game, and Philly's pass defense has actually been a little bit worse than most people are expecting. Stafford is averaging 40 pass attempts a game, so there's going to be a lot of volume regardless of the matchup. And did I mention that Cooper Kupp is finally coming back this week? Even if Cooper Kupp doesn't get 100% of the snaps on offense, his presence alone is still going to open up the team. Everybody is healthy for the Rams. It's a great matchup, high scoring, positive touchdown opportunities, just another great game for upside. But that is going to finish off this video of the must-start players for week 5. If you guys have made it all the way through to this video, I seriously appreciate you watching right now. And make sure to have your post notifications on because I'm dropping the must-sit videos tomorrow, probably today if you're watching it.